FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. The date is December 2nd, 2015. We are dedicating this show to the dearly departed late Richard Russell. He was the publisher of the Dow Theory Newsletter for decades. Just found out from Andy that he passed away last week, doing what he loved the best, which was writing his newsletter. And hopefully we'll all be able to get a copy of that last newsletter, Andy, and see what he was thinking about when he passed on.
Well, it would be like saying, what was I thinking about if I passed on? It's no different than it's been for months and years for him, just like it has been for me. He's pretty much, called a lot of the things that we're talking about long before we were even thinking about them. Like I recall, when I talked about when I got into precious metals in May of 2002, and I was looking on the internet, which then was not really a big deal, the internet, like as far as the alternative media, for sources of information to justify why I had gotten into precious metals. I found him first and foremost. Actually, I found him and Gata and Jim Sinclair. And I subscribed to Dow Theory letters way back when. And when I was owning gold and silver, actually back then it was just mining shares, I was doing it simply because I thought, look, the dollar, is too high. It's going to go down. I didn't quite understand the long-term ramifications of what was going on. I mean, I was certainly inherently bearish. That's why I was in the sector. But I could never have understood the monetary response that Richard Russell was talking about way back then. In fact, his term, inflate or die, regarding what central banks must do throughout a fiat Ponzi scheme has kind of been the basis of everything that I've studied and written about for the past decade.
Yeah, he was really a legend. I spoke to him once, probably about 30 years ago, Andy, when I was studying the Dow theory. And he was just a real gentle person and really interested about teaching you how to maneuver the market, how to not get burned, and how to read the tea leaves. And well, he's gone now, so we just have to pick up where he left off, Andy. And the news this week, hey, employment numbers, no doubt, are going to be magnificent, aren't they?
Yeah. And I'll just add to that, what you and I do, of course, we have careers, we're trying to make money, but both of us have changed our careers. I mean, I used to work on Wall Street, used to be a lawyer, you had a printing business. We've chosen to do this. I mean, I kind of backed into it more than chose. But, over the years, what we're doing has morphed into a labor of love. And I believe that we have been doing the right thing for a long time. And I appreciate that everything that you do and everyone in our community, because I believe that we are in the right. I know we're in the right. It's just a matter of time before we're fully vindicated. Certainly vindicated in the real world of the economy, but not yet in the precious metals because of the manipulation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Andy. There's nothing else in the world I'd rather be doing than what I'm doing now. And I know you feel exactly the same way. I'm reading, I'm listening to a series of podcasts called Hardcore History by this guy, Dan Carlin, and he's talking about World War I. And it's amazing how different things were back then, Andy. God, family, country. That was what it was all about. And the narrator, this guy, Dan Carlin, he's incredibly well-read, incredibly well-schooled on history, talks about how, looking at it from a 21st century person's view, the idea of gung-ho patriotism is really a very foreign concept for most of you out there, for me, and I know you, Andy. And why has it become that way? And I think a lot of what you and I talk about, Andy, is really why people have given up on their country. And if you want to think that globalism is some type of substitute for patriotism or nationalism, think again. I think globalism is atheism personified. And, you just look around and you see what's happening and you know that the setup is there.
Well, less philosophically speaking, the fact is people have been burned by their governments. Look, especially back then, 100 years ago, that we didn't have the communications networks that we have now. So it's instantaneous. You know what everything that they're saying and doing is. And as is what's going on in the world, people are a lot more educated, and so they know that there were lies that create everything. There were lies that created World War I and World War II. But what we're seeing today, it's multiplied by 1,000-fold. No, pretty much everything that's going on in the world is the result now of government interventions. Governments are supposed to be there to support you, not to take over your life, and that's what they're doing economically, politically. Militarily, of course. And it's the point, look, we're in gold and silver, for instance. Back in the 1930s, the early 30s, the government said, look, we're in a gold standard. Dollars are gold back. We desperately need gold to get out of the depression so we can print some more money. So can you please trade in your gold? We'll give you the $20.50 per ounce that it's worth, and you can get it back after we're out of the depression. And then, a year later, they say, oh, you can't have it back. And in fact, whatever else you have, we're going to take it from you. And then we're going to revalue it after we take it. So it's the same. It's that kind of thing. People just don't trust them anymore. And time again, we're going to be out of Iraq. We'll never go back. Well, it took 15 years. And guess what? We just went back in Iraq, and we may never leave Iraq this time. So, people have become jaded, and the world is a lot more populous, and communication spread of such lies a lot quicker. And, it's the fact that it's become more of an every man for himself type atmosphere, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really kind of sad here that this is the world we're living in. It makes me sad because I don't think that that things were set up to be this way, that life was supposed to be this way. And I think the powers that be want you at each other's throat, so you're not thinking about how they're screwing you.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're just deflecting, but it's part and parcel. You have declining economies, and governments do these kind of things. And, the world goes through growing pains. I mean, it has, whether it's due to the weather or the economy, whatever. And obviously, to me, the biggest growing pain it's going through now is the actual growing pain of population explosion. I mean, billions and billions of people have been added to the planet since I was born. And so you throw that in with the new weapons of mass destruction they have, and in actually having a fiat currency regime that's engulfed the whole planet, and you're multiplying all these issues 1,000-fold. And, then what it turns out is you get a couple of handfuls of people around the world making decisions, self-interested decisions, at the expense of the 99%. And here we are on unquestionably the worst global economy of our lifetimes, and probably the brink of war.
Yeah, very likely the brink of war here. And it just got all the feeling of it. Listening to this series of podcasts about World War I, and it's deja vu all over again. It really, really is.
Yeah, that's that French thing. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Except, the stakes are a lot higher. In World War I, there were 2 billion people in the world. Probably now there's 7 billion people. So there's a lot more that can go wrong, and all we can do is try to reach out to the very small amount of people that still think in the old-fashioned way, and try to eke a living out of it, and hopefully protect some people when the inevitable, which is happening as we occur. I love when people say, well, we have to wait till gold goes up. No, the world's falling apart. I mean, gold is actually going up in most currencies, and economically people are losing their shirt. Their currencies are collapsing. The governments are falling apart, but ultimately the people that we are primarily speaking to in the Western world are going to benefit if they listen to what we're talking about. So, I do feel like I'm doing something worthy.
Yeah. And ditto for that from me as well. So getting to the news here, ECB meeting tomorrow. What can they possibly do next?
Right. And of course, we have, all these things that say news with quotes around them, because there's nothing surprising about anything going on. And, these, as I call them, horrible headlines are just multiplying so rapidly that ECB meeting is just one of a million things. I mean, ECB has already expanded its QE program, which just started in March 2 or 3 times already. So it's hard to believe anyone can consider it news that they're going to do it again. But again, the next 2 days, you have 3 big meetings or events. You have the ECB's meeting, you have the NFP jobs report, and you have the OPEC biannual meeting. So the ECB, look, they pretty much telegraphed we're going to expand QE again. We're going to probably take negative rates even more negative. That's why the euro is pretty much at its 12-year low as we speak. And if he does follow up with what he's pretty much telegraphed, I'm pretty sure we're going to, be challenging that parity level with the dollar, not in the not too distant future, which will only put, inflationary pressures on the 99% of Europe, will only increase them and cause all these burgeoning secession movements in Spain and Portugal and Greece and you name it. The UK wants to get out of the European Union. It's all going to just make that stuff go crazy. I didn't even speak of France, what's going on there with the nationalism that's about to erupt. So, that's what's going on tomorrow. Of course, on Friday, you have the biannual OPEC meeting, and I can already see the rhetoric out there. The traders, the propagandists, the politicians are desperate for Saudi Arabia to say, we'll capitulate and reduce production and try to get prices up, which they're not going to do. I mean, I don't even need to predict that. I mean, first of all, they've said it. And second of all, they'd be crazy. I mean, Saudi Arabia just got downgraded to junk. Their CDS, their default CDS rates are surging. Their budget is based on $100 oil, so they desperately need money to pay their bills. And on top of that, what are they going to do? Cut production and allow the shale producers who are equally desperate for cash to take their market share? No, I mean, you cut your losses, but they're gonna pump as much oil as they can, just like the shale producers will, and Iran will, and they all will. And there's already an historic overproduction, historic inventory build. Demand is clearly falling because of the global economy. Certainly in China, it's falling more than anywhere. So, we'll get through that. And, whatever noise goes around it, the fact is that it's not going to change anything. Heck, OPEC has been above their quota, I think, for like 50 months in a row. They don't, whatever they say they don't do it anyway. And everyone knows that. And then, of course, you have the NFP jobs report. Look, we're at this point where there's not a doubt in my mind that, you go back to a month ago, just before the Fed minutes of the last, the October 28th Fed meeting, when they didn't change rates, of course. And remember, the previous jobs report was horrible, even by their manipulated standards. But all of a sudden, propaganda started coming out that they were going to raise rates anyway. Just by a quarter point or an eighth of a point. But clearly, there's none down my mind. They all got together and they said, look, we will completely and utterly lose all credibility entirely if we don't at some point raise rates. It's been now more than a year since QE ended. We've been saying we're in a recovery. We have to raise rates, or at some point everyone will realize we're not going to. So what did they do? They just went hog wild with the biggest gold and silver smash I've ever seen. I mean, they've been gone down pretty much every single day for a month over nothing. And all we've had is just massively, the economic data has gotten worse and worse. And the geopolitical strains and the currencies and the commodity index just hit a 40-year low. And the Baltic Dry Index hit an all-time low. I mean, just you couldn't have more bullish news, let alone all the data about record gold and silver demand and plunging production. And now we have literally almost no inventory left on the COMEX. And so they did that, and they goosed the Dow by 2,000 points amidst the worst imaginable data, the worst corporate earnings season we've had since 2009. Because they figured, look, if we can get the markets where we want them, maybe we can raise rates a quarter point just to say that we did it. And the problem is, all they did by doing that was made the markets more overvalued. They've scared more currency traders around the world into trashing more currencies and trashing commodities. And of course, a strong dollar will only make our earnings for U.S. companies get worse, et cetera. So all they did was make things worse. And, today I see the ADP report showed surging employment, which was really just a catch up because they massively were below last month's NFP report. When it went up, they went down, which is what they always do. But the fact is, they'll probably make a good number on Friday because they're desperate to say we can raise rates. But all it's going to do is make things worse. It's not going to reduce gold demand. It's not going to increase the economy. It's just going to make all these factors that we talk about day in and day out, crashing commodities and currencies and social unrest and geopolitical tensions and falling economic data, like, the ISM manufacturing index that fell below 50 yesterday, get worse. In fact, today's article, and I know I'm rambling, but today's article that I just wrote, it'll be up later, it said, raise rates. This is when the Fed lowers them. I mean, unequivocally, quantitatively, the numbers coming out, both in the United States and around the world, are the same or worse as what they were when the Fed was lowering rates and instituting QEs. So again, this is just a matter of the markets are heavily manipulated right now, but all they're doing is setting us up for an even bigger crash down the line.
Yeah. And when that will be is anybody's guess, but it's certainly a lot closer than it was just a few months ago. And it's just a question of when, but it will happen.
And even when you look in stock markets, I mean, look, I talk about last to go markets. The Dow Jones propaganda, average paper, gold and silver. But most of the markets have succumbed already, except for the big Western stock markets that are supported by PPTs like the Dow and the German index and the UK index and now the Chinese index. Except for those and the smashing of paper, gold and silver, everything else they've lost. I mean, most of those Southeast Asian stock markets are down, and the South American markets are down, and most of the European ones are sideways. Commodities are in an unmitigated free fall. The average currency around the world is at or near its all-time low. Average economic data is at or near multi-decade lows. So, they win a few battles, and unfortunately, the battle that I am most engaged in is the one that they are winning the most right now. But they are, decidedly losing to economic Mother Nature, and eventually, this will be such a spectacular collapse that 2008 won't even be remembered because there will be no mechanisms to save it other than hyperinflation.
Yeah. Oh, no question about it. Well, I think we'll end on that note. And just again, prayers for Richard Russell and his family. He was a legend in our industry and in American finance. He was around for decades, perhaps not in the mainstream like the people running the country and the world into the ground, but a voice of reason and sensibility. So he will be missed, and we will miss you until next week, Andy.
Yeah, and I will miss you too.
All right. You be well.
You too.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.